So okay. So first of all, let's formally introduce our module CCS 1300 Programming Concepts, and in this one will be one of the very basic modules we discuss. At the same time, useful for you irrespective of your specialization. So in this one, we are going to discuss and experience the basic programming concepts of problem solving using computers. And we are going to use programming as a tool to solve problems. And by doing so, we are going to develop your coding skills. So there are a couple of things we expect at end of the module. First of all, coming up the solutions for well-defined problems. And when you want to solve a particular problem, there could be multiple ways to solve this. So therefore, we will discuss, uh, you know, um, uh, different ways of solving it. And at the same time, we are going to look at what is the role of the programming language and how do you practice coding, and as well as how to utilize different programming methodologies. And we will talk about two different modes which we are going to discuss today: interactive mode as well, and descriptive mode. How to get familiar with both the modes, and also creates very simple general purpose applications. So with that said, let me move on to uh, contents. And so if I go into details, what we are planning to do, when we talk about the basic problem solving, we are going to discuss about what kind of problems we are going to solve with programming language. And with that said, we are going to talk about the use of programming language. And today's session, actually, I'm focusing on Python programming, which is one of the popular programming language right now, and very simple one, which is very easy to use. At the same time, it's quite extensive use in various different fields. So therefore, we are going to start with that first. And having said that, we are going to also look at uh, what we call basic constructing Python programming. And there are various ways that you can use Python program, but in this particular module, we focus on what we call the structured programming concepts. Right. So let's start then. Let me introduce the software tools which I'm planning to use throughout the module. In initial sessions, we will use the basic IDE comes from when you install Python, so which we are going to do. So I will show you like how you may actually download Python and install in your machine in case if you have not done before. Once you are familiar with this basic Python idle environment, we are going to focus on what we call the notebook environment, which is very popular in data science area. Because in the second environment that we are going to discuss, we are going to have all our nodes At the same time, code and the outputs are in the same place. So therefore, these notebook environments are very popular. We are going to discuss two environments. One is what we call the Google Colab environment, which is if you have a Google account, you have access to this directly. And at the same time, if you want to install this in your machine, this is what we call Jupyter notebooks, right? So I have given you all the links for you to work with. Then again, any module you need some help. As I promised you earlier, I will also post my videos at the same time, recorded videos from the previous offerings. And for the formal, we need some textbook as well. So I'm referring like some of the textbooks when I'm teaching. So anyone is new to programming, and if you are a beginner, I recommend to refer these books as well. The first one is in actually C, but it talks about the general programming. So therefore, it will be reading material for you to, if you are starting as a beginner. But I highly recommend the second one because it's freely available. I have given you the link as well. So this is called How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. So it starts with the Python, talks about lot in various features available in Python programming from the starting to that means the basic Python programming to more advanced Python programming. Third one, actually, I have given as a reference in case if you're not interested in reading, but let's say you want to practice out, like you want to try it out. So there are many practical tutorials, and I have selected one of my favorites, which is comes from the W3 schools, where they have a lot of tutorial in various technologies, and they have a Python one. So I have given you there. And they also have their own Python environment where you can code within the web page itself. Okay, so let's start then directly with Python. So in this part, we are going to look at the basics in Python. We are going to try to understand what Python programming language is, what are the features and basic things. So the first thing I would like to discuss with you is why Python is so popular. At the same time, what are the features available, right? So before I'm going to explain what is listed here, I would like to take you to one of the web pages. This particular web page is called tiob.com. Let me change the sharing. So this particular website actually ranks all the programming languages. And if you go through the index for the October 2024, if you go down, you will notice that the Python is the number one programming language among the others, right? And if you compare 1 year back, so at that time also Python was on the top. And you will notice that C++ becoming the second place, Java third place, whereas C is going down compared to previous year. So you can see that the importance of learning Python, which means because it's popular and it's the number one programming language, so understanding the basics is very important. So that's the first thing. At the second time, I will go another web page we call NumPy.org. This is actually one of the Python libraries, which we are going to discuss at the very end, which listed out some of the areas where Python programming is used. Actually, they have listed out where NumPy is used, but the NumPy is one of the Python libraries. So if I go down and if I can show you like These are some of the areas where Python is used. So you can see topics like quantum computing, statistical computing, signal processing, image processing, graphs and networks, especially in social media networks, we represent everything as graphs. Roads, for example, we represent as graphs. So how to work with graphs and nexus are very important. Astronomy, cognitive psychology, bioinformatics, Bayesian inference, mathematical analysis, even in mathematics, Python are heavily used. Chemistry, geoscience, geographic processing, even the architectural level in civil, for example. So you can see that uh, learning Python is very useful, not just for IT per se. You can see there are a lot of other applications as well. So when you learn how to implement various different applications, you can find modules developed for Python. So learning is very, very important. And those who are going to work, especially for data science, there are array of Python modules are there. Python will be one of the programming language that you are going to use heavily in data science, for example. It's not only for data science. You can see it's in machine learning and visualization. And if you go through your curricula for all the 4 degrees, we are offering both the artificial intelligence module and machine learning volume for all the 4 specialization, irrespective of your specialization, which is very important to know these 2 important modules. So what you're going to learn is will be heavily used, and it's very important. So having said that, let me again get back to where we have stopped. So let me now explain a bit about the features of Python programming. And I'm not going to explain everything, but I hope that you can, explore more about this Python programming and try to understand what all this means. But let me pick a couple of things for you. The first one, Python is very simple. So anyone can learn, even the kid can learn. The ideas are very simple. So therefore, even the non-programmers, those who are not into IT, are also learning Python. So for example, at SLTC, we teach Python for everybody. So we have 6 other faculties. So everybody learns Python because it's very important and at the same very simple. And take my word, at the end of this module, you'll be very competent in Python. Definitely, if you follow my instruction, if you work hard, if you put some effort for this, right? So definitely you will be develop the necessary knowledge and skills in Python programming. So therefore, you will witness that it's easy to learn. Third point, when you write Python script, we sometimes call or Python program, you can run anywhere. I mean, Python can be run in your mobile phone, and even it can run in very high powerful machines, which we call supercomputers in places like Google and NASA. So you don't have to, change what you write, irrespective of what hardware you use, right? So that is also one of the advantages. Then it's free and open source. You don't have to pay for it. And that is number one, a country like ours. So it's free and it's open source, where you can actually, once you are familiar, you can see how things are implemented inside as well. Other things I'm going to skip. It's a high level language, portable, interpreted, object oriented, extensible, embeddable, extensive library. So let me start with the last one. So as I showed you earlier as well, there are extensive library of Python modules where you can do anything you want, starting from web development to game programming to very complex mathematical analysis. You can use Python. So therefore, I think I have given you enough examples for you to, learn Python. Right. I think now we can get back to, know more about Python programming. It's called a high-level programming language because all the instructions are very simple. Uh, we write in very simple English, which called high-level programming language. Early days, we use low-level programming languages like machine language and assembly, which are non-human readable programming languages. For example, in machine language, we use ones and zeros, which was very difficult at the beginning. But nowadays, it's not like that. So therefore, we call it a high-level programming language. And it's also interpreted language. Interpreted means that you don't have to convert into binary form to run this. Languages like C programs, you have to first convert it to binary form so that computer can directly understand. What happens with Python is it'll take a couple of lines, one or two lines, and then it will convert into binary and then it'll execute. This fashion we call interpreted languages. So as a beginner, it's easy because you are tend to make a lot of mistakes. So therefore, for a beginner, we prefer interpreted languages compared to compiled languages. Right. So let's now understand the two modes available. In Python, there are two ways you can program. First one we call interactive mode. So when you install Python, then you will get what we call a shell where you can program with the shell. Second one, you can write your code as a separate script. That means as a file, you can save it, keep it somewhere else. And whenever you need it, you can use them, or you can develop programs. So when you want to develop very complex software application, so you have to use script mode. Okay, so I think now we understood the two modes. Now I want to show you how to use that. So I'm going to start first installing Python. So to install Python, we'll go to the official Python website. If you go to python.org, so let me share my screen. That is the best way to do this. And then, right, I'm going to Python. Go to python.org. If you go to Python official web page, this is how you might see. So in this particular case, couple of things I want to show you before we move on to downloads. So for example, if you want to run some Python commands, and that can be done within this web page itself. So can you notice that there's a yellow button here? So this yellow button, we call it interactive shell. So what happens when you click it, you will get a Python shell inside where you can type and try out command. So let me show you that first. So I'm going to click this yellow button. You can follow the same. And if you do that, you will notice that in the background, right, it will load the console and it will load Python interpreter. And you will end up something like this. So what this means is a Python environment, right? So even without installing your machine, you can, run commands here. It's like Google Doc where you don't have to install, Office application in your machine. So for example, let's say I want to print something. Let me use our first function, which we call print. And then let's print a message, or we call it string. So I will use double quotes. I'm going to say, okay, hello world. Right. So just notice that it's a simple function we call print function, and we are printing a message, or we call it string. So therefore we use double quotes. So if I press enter, you will notice that you will get the message hello world. So what it means, this is the interactive mode that I have try to explain to you. And this is sometimes called shell as well, which means you type something, you enter, immediately you get the answer. So for example, this shell can be used as the calculator. For example, if I want to add 2 plus 3, okay, you see it's 5. So shell accept commands. So what we need to learn is in this module is what commands we are going to use, how to put them in an order so that we can solve well-defined problems. Okay, so I hope now you got some understanding how Python works in a shell environment. But to use this, you need to have internet connectivity. Therefore, if you are working offline, first of all, you have to download and then you need install. So let me show you how to download it. Right. So if you go to python.org and if you go to downloads, in my case, I have a Windows machine. So therefore, it suggests me to download this particular Python version. It says 3.13.0. So depend on your operating system, it will suggest you what you should download. So I'm going to click this one, which will start the download. In my case, okay, it's download in progress and it's already downloaded. And if I go to my download location, I'm going to click it. I'm going to open. You will notice this. Let me show you. So you can notice that Python is downloaded in my machine. So I'm going to double click. Unfortunately, in my case, I have already installed. So therefore, it will ask, different way. Ideally, you should have installed here, right? So let me first remove this, uninstall my previous version, and then I'm going to install it again. You can try the same if you have a reliable internet connectivity. My suggestion is you should go and download it and follow my instruction. Worst case, let's say you have a slower connection, you can do it at a later time. But remember that for the next week session, I want everybody to come prepared. That means with installing Python. Right. Okay, so I'm going to show you again in my machine because earlier I had some version. So I'm going to double click. Now you can notice. So now I'm going to start fresh and you should see something called install now. I'm going to click this one. So once I click this one, this particular Python version, in my case, it's 3.13.0, will be installed into my machine. Depending on how fast your machine, this might take couple of minutes to couple of seconds to couple of minutes. So if it is takes some time, you have to be patient. So don't worry. So in my case, you can notice the setup was successful, which means I have successfully installed Python in my machine. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this one as well. Right now, if I go to my Windows, all apps, and if I go down, and I should see the particular Python version is installed. So you can see here, Python 3.13, it's new and it's installed in my machine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to select idle environment. So make a note of this. Idle is the IDE to run Python. So I'm going to click this one. Okay, now you should see something like this. If you have done everything successfully, you will see a idle shell or Python shell like this, and you will notice that it lists the Python version, Python 3.13, and this is called a prompt, and it waits for our instruction. Okay, then I'm going to pause for some time. Okay, so as I told you earlier, now when you install Python, it will install this idle environment. So this environment is what we call the interactive mode. Interactive mode means this in this environment, you can try out things, right? Try out means you can type something and immediately you can get the answer. So it's very important in the beginning to understand these individual commands. So you need a lot of practice, right? So that can be done here. So as I told you earlier, so the very first one, I'm going to type it again. I can say, okay, print. And within double quotes, I will say, hello world. Right? You can close brackets. And when you enter, Python interpreter will understand the command and execute. If you make mistakes, it will provide you error as well. So remember, most of the time, Python commands are simple case. So all the print function should be all simple letters. For example, if I make a mistake and if you put capital P instead of simple P, and this is what will happen. It tells us that, okay, Python doesn't know what print with P capital. And it also tells us, did you mean print in simple? So you understand this. So some cases you have to type it exactly how you have to do this, because there are some rules that you need to follow. And that's what we are going to learn here. Right. Now, I hope you understand the shell mode. Right. Let's go back to my slides again. So as I told you earlier, there are two modes. First one, interactive mode. You type your program and then you get the answer, right? And then we have what we call script mode, right? We have script mode. So in script mode, you have to create a separate file. So let me show you how to do that too. So I'm going to go back again to shell. You can follow exactly what I do here. So I go click file. Then I'm going to select new file. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to get a new window, right? So when I do that, you get two windows. This is the shell window and this is the new window, right? And I'm going to put in side by side. You can notice that this is my shell and this is my new window. If you're wondering how I did this, so if you have the window like this, if you press window key and right arrow, it will go to the right hand side. And then you have to select the other window in the left hand side. Right. So now you see we have a empty window. and this is shell. So empty window is a place where we write programs, right? So for example, I'm going to type the same command, hello world, right? Then next step, you have to save this. File, save. In this particular case, I'm going to go inside the folder, right? And then under the codes, and I will create a new folder. I will say October 2024. I'll go inside and then I will type this is program number 1. You can type whatever a name. Some program names you cannot use, but for the time being, let's type program 1. And let me save this. And if you have done this successfully, you can notice that the title of the window is renamed as program1.py, and it will show you where it has stored. If you go to my file, so for example, if I go into my file explorer, if I go to the particular location I have stored, and this is the place, you can notice that I have just one file and we call it program number 1. Right. So once you save, then you can run this. Now to run the script, you can click on run. Then you can click on run module. And when you do that, it will execute and it will display. You will see the outcome here in the shell. You notice that restart, and this is the program number 1. And when you execute program number 1, you have hello world. Let me add another one. So the beauty of scripting is you can change, right? Depending on your requirement. Let's say cell TC, right? Let me have another print statement, right? So I have 3 print statements. So let me rerun again, run module, same file, and it will ask whether to save this. Source must be saved. I will click OK. And you can notice here, it will restart again, same program, but this time there are 3 lines. And this way of programming we call script mode. That means we have typed some commands, we saved as a file, and then when we run, we get the output, right? Right, let's get back to again the note. So I hope now you understand the 2 modes. In a way, in interactive mode, you can just type the command and you can get the outcome. So this is what is available in the shell. So, and this is useful if you try it out the command. If you are new to programming and if you want to try it out, try to understand what happens with that particular command. Okay, use interactive mode. But if you are building something, let's say you are going to build an application, then we have to save it as a script. We have to use script mode. You type your commands, save it, and then you can run. Okay. Right. Now, when I represent messages, strings, I have used double quotes. Some of you have inquired about single quote. Of course, in Python supports both single quotes and double quotes. And I will explain why in coming slides. And for your record, even you have like triple quotes. So let me explain that. So just wait and see. Right. So these things we have already discussed. Saying hello world in Python and writing your first program. So I have given you all the steps that you need. You start the idle, choose new file, new window, you type it, you save it, and you run module. The shortcut key is F5. That means if you press F5, it automatically runs it. Right. Okay. Now, let me explain how to get the help. So what I mean here is, let's say you don't know about print function. So if you do not know about the print function and how to use them, you can always get help. Getting help in Python is you have to use a function help. So for example, I will type it here. If I want to know about print function, I will type the command like this. I will say, okay, give me the help on print. I will say help within bracket, I will type print. And if you press enter, you will get a simple document like this. I know you might not understand right now, but when you get used to it, you will learn how to use documents like this to understand what print does. But let me explain for you. So here it says print, and then you have a star and arguments. I will explain arguments later on, but for the time being, you can put values, and star means you can have multiple values. So which means I can type something like this. I can say print. I can use double quotes. Let's say SLTC, double quote, comma. I can say, you can notice that. You can have as much as you want, but you have to comma separate them. Right? Okay. So let me type another one, print. We will say CCS. I will type a number. In numbers, you don't have to type double quotes. And then let me put programming concepts. So here I have three values, but you will notice here I have a string, and then I have a number. Again, I have a string. So in Python support everything, and you will get output like this, right? So by looking at this, I have understood this. Let me explain one more. Now there's something called SEP here, right? SEP means how values are separated. For example, here we have two values, SLTC Paduka. And if you look at what is written inside SEP, it says string inserted between values. So what are you going to insert in between? And it says default is a space. So you have a space here. What do you mean by that? Which means if you want to change what you won't have in between, you can change this one like this. For example, I can say, okay, print SLTC Paduka, comma, I will say SEP. I'm going to redefine it. I will say comma. So what it means? So when you separate values in between, I'm forcing to put a comma like this. Let me try again. Let me put a colon. So what SEP does is basically when you have multiple values, the values are separate with this, whatever the values you specify in this SEP. So if you put a comma, you will get a comma in between. If you use colon, you will have a colon in between. If you use star, you have a star in between. Right? Okay, for example, we can say 10, 20. These are just two numbers. It will print like this. But if you say 10, 20, set, let me use a star like this. So I hope you understands now, right? So likewise, you can explore more about anything that we will learn using help function. Make a note of this. It's very important. So let's get back to my slide again. So getting help in Python is easy. You have to use help print to get more information about the print function. But if you need a general help, you can just type help. Right. Any questions up to this point? I have got some comments, question from some of you. Now there is one, right? And the others are communicating. Please use the chat session wisely. If something is not clear, just type it. I mean, don't worry about your language, right? Okay. Thanks, Shaki, confirming it. Thank you. Shall we move to the next one then? By the way, remember, after every lecture, I have a small quiz. I forgot to mention this, right? The idea of the quiz is I want to see whether you have understood what I have explained in the class, right? Nothing else. So you don't have to worry about the quiz, but the quiz is to understand how much you can absorb during this 2 hours time. Okay, so that's about it. So we have learned two functions so far. We learned print function, then we learn help function. Okay, right. Now let me explain a little bit more about basics in Python. The next idea that we are going to understand is called constants and variable. Now, when you're writing programs, we have to focus on two things. There are things which will not change during the program execution. They are called constant values. Sometimes some of the things will change, we call variables. So let me first start with the constant values. Python supports various different constants. We call literal constants. That means these are saved as it is, no change. For example, if you look at how numbers are represented, you can have 5, 1.2. They will take it as it is. Let me show you. I'm going to get the shell and I'm going to get it to half of the screen, right? Okay. So hope that is clear to you. So if you just put 5 and enter, nothing will happen. It will print again 5 because Python understands it's a number. But the other thing is Python is also understand what data type is. This is a whole number we call integer. So actually Python understand this number is an integer number. Right, let's move to the next one. 1.23. Again, Python takes as it is. But this time Python knows that this is a number with a decimal point. We call it a floating point number. In Python short, we say a float. Third one is a special representation. Sometimes we call this is scientific notation. So what this number means, we have 9.25 e minus 3. What this means is 9.25 into 10 to the power minus 3. If you don't understand, don't worry, right? In other words, This is minus 3, right? Which means this is same as divide by 10 to the power 3. That means divide by 1000. So which means we'll get 0.00925, right? So let me try this out. So in our case, if I put this format, 9.25 e minus 3. I told you this means 9.25 into 10 to the power minus 3. Meaning this is divided by 10 to the power 3. 10 to the power 3 means 1000. So this is similar to 9.25 divided by 1000. And the answer we are getting is 0.00925. And Python interpreter also takes this also as a floating point number because there's a decimal point, right? So I hope you got my point. Small question for you. I want you to answer in the chat. What about if I put this 1e2 without checking this in Python? Can you give me the answer without checking this in Python? Give me the answer for this. I will type 1e2. What is the outcome? Right. So this is like 1 into 10 to the power 2. 10 to the power 2 means 10 into 10. That is 100. So 1 into 100. This is 100. This is what we expect. I totally get it. Most of your answers. But there's small difference. Right? In Python, if you use this notation, Python will take this as a floating point number, a number with a decimal point. Make a note of this. Very important. I know you are beginning, but we need to understand these ideas. If you use this format, Python always get this as a number with a decimal point. So that's why we get 100.0. So depending on how you represent, right, same number, Python takes it differently. For example, now if you type 100, Python take it as a whole number. If you use 100 with double quotes, Python will take it as a string value. If you take 100 with a decimal point, Python will take it as a floating point number. So depending on how we represent, it could be the same thing, but Python sees it differently. So very important, you need to understand this in the beginning. Right. We'll discuss more on this. We'll discuss more on this. So now you understand, I hope you understand this one, mathematical or scientific notation. Second one, about the string values. So some of you have already asked, right? Use of double quotes and single quotes. So double quotes and single quotes, both are accepted. So if I type SLTC in double quotes, it's a string. And SLTC in single quote, it's also taken as a string. Make a note of both. But there's a specific reason why there are two ways of representation. Because sometimes the string is a part of this. These are two symbols, right? We have double quotes and we have a single quote. So double quotes and the single quote could be a part of this string. So let me give you an example. So if you have something like this, it's a string. If I type this, now Python confuses with this representation. Because what Python takes it as, if you provide a single quote, Python will take it as a start of a string. And with the next one, Python will take it as an end of the string. Now you can notice that when I type single quote, it single quote as a string and a single quote. You can notice this part of only will be green because Python understand that the start and end. Therefore, you will get an error. So if you have a single quote as a part of the string, then you should use double quotes. So I'm going to use double quote this time. I will say it's a string. So no issue. Similar to that, let's say I want to print or I want to type message SLTC with double quotes. Then if I type like this, we'll get an error. Why is that? Because double quotes start and end. So if you want to have a string with double quote, then you should use single quote. Actually, you have to use print statement, something like this. So let me start with the first one. When you say it's a string, it should be like this. It's a string. You can notice since single quote is inside, we use double quotes. Similar to that, if you want to print double quotes, then you should use single quotes. Any questions up to this point? We discuss about the numbers and we discuss about the strings. So if you take numbers and string as it is, they are known as literal constants, which they don't change during the program execution. No questions? Let me check in the chat. No questions. Okay. Let me move to the next one then. Okay, good. Next one. So Python support various different number formats. I actually discuss only two, that is integer and float, but actually there's another one called complex. For example, those who works in electrical and electronics, especially in electronics, right? So we use this representation. For the time being, I'm going to focus, I'm not going to focus on this one, but let me explain these two. Now, I already told you, depending on how you input the number, Python takes it differently. So, for example, if you put 508, Python will take as a integer value or a whole number, we call it. But if you use 508 with a decimal point like this, then it takes as a floating point number. Strange enough, if you just put a decimal point even without anything, Python will take it as a string, floating point number. So make a note of this, very, very important. So I have given you some example for integer values. Basically, it could be positive and negative. Floating points again, even without a value, if you have a decimal point, Python will take it as a floating point number. Right. Let's move on. Now, I told you that Python will take this differently, but how should we verify this? Okay, fortunately, we have another function called type function. So if you use type function with whatever the value you want to verify, it will give you the type of the data. For example, if I start with the first one, type 508, Basically, what we are going to ask from Python is what is the type of the number 508? And Python will tell us it's int. Actually, it says class int. I will explain later on what classes are in Python. But for the time being, just notice it says class int, which means Python will treat this data as a string, sorry, as an integer value. Same number, if you put a decimal point, Python will take it as a floating point number. Right? So I hope now you understand this. So similar to that, if you type, let's say in double quotes, hello world, Python will tell us that is a string value. Similar to that, if you use single quote, again Python will tell us that is a string value. But if you have used commas for large numbers, you know that when you have very large number, we use comma to group these numbers. So if you want to represent 1 million, and if you use comma to group, separate them, and if you try to enter, you will get an error message. The reason for the error message, make a note of this. Comma has a special meaning in Python. So therefore, this is not accepted in Python. So therefore, if you want to type very large number, you can type it without grouping, without any, commas. So if you want to represent the type of 1 million, this is the correct format without any commas, right? Make a note of this. Is it clear to you? Any questions, please? Are we clear up to this point? I told you today's class about learning basics in Python. We discuss about numbers and we discuss about the string values. We discuss about different way we can input a particular number, and depend on how we represent, we get different data types. That's what we discussed. So we learned 3 functions so far. Okay, good. Let's move on there. No questions so far. Please, I want you to, if you don't understand anything at all, you can be blank and just type it in the chat, or you can, talk to me. Okay, let's discuss strings in detail. So one thing you need to note is string. If you take a string, means it's a characters, right? We have a sequence of characters. When I say SLTC, the string, we have 4 characters, SLTC. And you know that Python supports Unicode. So if you know how to type in Sinhala, you can use it here as well. So let me show you that one as well. But you have to be very careful how to type this. First, I will type it in English, the part of it. I will say print and I will put double quotes. Now I'm going to switch into my language to Sinhala. I know it's not properly rendered, but I think you understood, right? What I want to try it out. So if you are familiar with Tamil, you can do the same. So Python supports Unicode. Right. And the single quotes and double quotes, although we have used for one-liners, we call one-liners. So if you type something in a single line, then you use single quotes and double quotes. But if you try in multi-line string, this is not going to work. Let me explain. So let me say print. Let me try type SLTC Paduka. I'm going to press enter. And immediately when I try to press enter, we get an error, because when you want to write multi-line strings, single quote or double quote will not work. So make a note of this. If you are using single quotes or double quotes, it should be a single line. If you type print address and you cannot use single quotes or double quotes, then what you should use? If you need multiple lines, make a note of this. You have to use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Okay, let me show you. I'm going to say print triple single quotes SLTC, enter, triple single quotes, close brackets, enter. This is how we will get it. Similar thing, let me show you with the triple double quotes. Sorry. So you can write out printing your address, for example. You will have multiple lines. Of course, you can use either triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Okay, with that, we finish our discussion on strings. So representation of strings, we can use single quotes, we can use double quotes. For multi-line strings, you can use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Okay. Any questions? If you are comfortable up to this point, can you please raise your hands then? Okay, let me see the numbers. Right now, I can see about half of the class raising their hands. Thank you. So at least now I know half of the class understand what I'm trying to explain in the session, right? Okay. Thank you, guys. You can lower the hands. Thanks. Appreciate it. So let's move on to the next one then. A small exercise. Two questions. Tell me, how are you going to print these two messages? I need the answer in the chat box. Small exercise. Give me an answer for printing these two messages. What are the commands we have to use? Okay, we get a Sarathi, Shakir, Deneth. Sarathi, just check the second print statement. I want to print SLTC with double quotes. And we got correct answers with Chatura, Kasturiya Rachi, correct answer. Senesh, Vituranga, Hitara, Tismini, good. Ruchira answers both the questions. Dinit answers both the questions. Okay, Shakir also answers both the questions. Good. Okay, thanks for sharing your answers. Right, let me show my answer as well. First one, I have to print what's your name, right? So I have to say print. Now the question is whether I should use double quotes or single quotes. We know single quotes is inside. So I am going to decide to use double quotes. So I will use double quotes. What's your, sorry, what's your name? So you get exactly like this. Second one, SLT with double quotes. So I think we discussed this already. You had to use single quotes, then double quotes, then double quote, single quote. And we are going to exactly like this. Okay, so I'm assuming that you know now how to use print function. You can print anything you want with print. Okay, yes, it actually shows me answer as well. Right, good. Okay, let's move on. Now we discuss about the constant representation. We talk about the numbers and we also discuss about the strings. So let's talk about the variables. Now, you already know variables from your mathematics, right? For example, you might have used in maths x equals 10, y equals 20, x plus y is then 10 into 20 is 30 and so on. So you already know about use of variables. So for the computing, this is also the same. We use variables to store any information and later you can manipulate them, meaning like you can change later on. We'll discuss how we can do that. But we need to first understand how to name variables. So we are going to discuss about variable names, which we call identifiers. So you can, when you're naming, you have to be very careful. There are some rules we need to follow, right? So let's look at what are the rules we need to follow when we are creating variables. First one, in Python, when you want to store something, when you want to create a variable name, its first character should be a letter or underscore. Make a note of this. So when you're typing something for a variable name, the first letter should be a letter or underscore. The second rule, after the first character, you can have letters, underscores, or digits. New addition, digits are also possible with the second character. You cannot use it as the first character. Make a note of this. Third rule, when you're using names, you have to be very careful about the case, lowercase and uppercase. For example, if you type my name in all simple and my name with N capital, Python treat these two are as two separate variables. Okay, now you can notice some valid identifiers or valid variable names. For example, if you take just single character like IXY, it's valid. Second one, we have underscore, underscore, my underscore name. This is also valid because you start with underscore. And the remaining ones, what you have is just letters and underscore. So it's valid. Look at the third one, name underscore 23. Again, valid because you start with a letter and after that you have letters, underscores, and digits. Look at the fourth one. It starts with A and then 1B2 underscore C3. So after the first letter or character, you have numbers, you have letters, and you have underscores. That's all. So all these names are valid identifiers. Let's look at some invalid one as well. So for example, what is the problem with the first one? Any guesses? This variable name. What is the problem? What rules are we violating here? Okay, Ruchira said there's a space. Of course, there's a space. Prashan also said. So there's a space in between. Spaces are not allowed. Make a note of this. Lakrandi, Ranatunga has also noticed there's a space. Spaces are not allowed. So therefore, you will notice that even the third one is also not valid because you have spaces. Okay, what about the third one? What is the problem with the third one? Yes, what is the problem with the third one? We have my dash name. Okay, remember dash are not valid in Python. Okay, good. What about the last one? Last one. What is the problem? Yes. Last one, you cannot use double quotes or single quotes as a variable name. So you cannot use them. So I hope now you understand that when we are naming variables, there are some rules needs to be followed, and we discuss some valid ones as well as some invalid ones. Good. I think we can move on. A simple exercise where we have variable names. So if you look at only the left-hand side, these are some variables. This is again a variable. This is again variable. Okay, we'll start with the first one. First one, is it a valid variable or not? Valid or not valid? Can you tell me in the chat? First one, is it a valid variable name or not? Okay, some says valid, some says not valid. Why is that? What is the first rule? Variable name. So identifiers should start with a letter, not a number, right? So let's try type this and you will get the answer. I will type. This is assignment, which means we have a variable one side and then you assign some value. And if you try to do this, it will highlight because this variable name start with the number and numbers are not valid. So it says invalid decimal, literal. Okay, good. What about the second one? Second one, is it a valid variable? It's again not very valid variable because dollar is a different symbol. And the only symbol Python allows us is underscore, right? Okay. So for example, if I type this again, just to elaborate, more dollar equals 1 million. Yes. Dollar is the problematic one, right? Okay, good. Third one, is it valid or not valid? Third one. It looks valid, right? So those who are saying valid, I understand. Because nothing wrong. But let's try this. Class. And you see that, sorry, I made a mistake, but class it says syntax error. So it doesn't see any problem with the name, but this is a special name. So therefore, this is not valid. So let me explain more. So in Python, there are some words which we cannot use as variable names. So class is one of them, because if you look at Python, in this particular case, I'm referring Python 3.12 version. There are some words we call keywords. That means these words we use when we are developing programs in Python. These words cannot be used as variable names. Make a note of this. Right? So, for example, class is here. So that's why you cannot use that, because class is what we call the keyword or reserved word. So therefore, you cannot use as a variable name. For is another one. So likewise, all these 35 keywords, you cannot use as variable names. But note that most of the keywords are lowercase, except the first three. Again, make a notice that false, F capital, true, T capital, none, N capital. So you cannot use capital true, but you might use simple true, right? So that's the idea. So you have a case difference. So just to summarize, what are the rules we discuss about the variable names? The starting one should be a letter. After the start, you can have letters, underscores, and then numbers. So when you start, you can start with either letter or underscore. Right, good. I think we learned about the variable names. We discussed that it has to start with a variable, letter. And after that, letter or underscore. And after that, you can have letter, underscore, or a digit. And we also discussed that some of the words we cannot use, and they are called keywords. So in Python keywords, any of these, you cannot use them as variable names. Right. Let's discuss the very last idea, assignment. That means variables, I told you, can be used to hold some values. So usually, therefore, variable will be in your left-hand side, and the right-hand side, you can have constant, that means a some value, or you can have a variable, or you can have some expression. I will explain what those are. So you have given example. So we have a equals 10. So a is a variable, 10 is a constant value, right? So when you type a equals 10, and if you press enter, what happens in Python? Allocate a memory or allocate a space in memory to hold 10, right? And to hold 10, you allocate a space, and this memory address we referred with A. So when I say A will refer the memory location of this number 10. Next one, B equals A, you will see that the right-hand side is another variable. So what happens here when you say B equals A? B equals A means still it's the same 10 you are referring to, right? B is also 10 then. A is 10. We say B equals A. Since A is 10, B is also 10. So what is C then? What is the value of C? In the chat, please. Right, good. Okay, good. I think with that one we can conclude. But before that, because A is 10, B is 10, then it's 20, right? So most of you got the correct answer. Next one, we need to make attendance.